I strongly believe that my spirituality, the centeredness of how important spirituality has been in my life since I can remember, is where that light came from when I was in that dark space of I want to end my life. It was those foundational principles from both, I believe, the Buddhism and from our Christian faith that was able to say, this is not the path for you. This is not your purpose. And it has been the fact that I grew up in such a spiritually centered space that whenever I am going through anything, I say, I don't talk to myself, I talk to God. So, I'm constantly seeking that spiritual balance in my life.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Sound Bombing. I created this show for people who want to experience a radical, life-changing journey through the sounds of my diverse guests. I hope that each sound you hear on this show will strengthen your faith, encourage your dreams, and challenge you to awaken the greatness within you.
Drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. We're going to drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. We're going to drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. We come to drop the bomb. Drop the bomb.
This is a journey into sound. A journey which along the way will bring to you new color, new dimension, new values, and a new experience.
Ladies and gentlemen, the star of the show,
LaMarr, Darnell, Shields.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever the time of the day it is. Welcome to Sound Bombing. I'm so glad that you decided to hang out with me today. I'm your host, Dr. LaMarr Darnell Shields, the creator of Sound Bombing. And my goal with this show is to introduce you to people with ideas that will help you unlock your full potential. Unless you've been hiding under a rock, you know that there's a global pandemic which brought on involuntary changes to our lives, to our family lives, to our friends, everybody around us. Now, regardless of who you are, the challenges you are facing, change can be overwhelming for anyone. I don't care how much money you're making. I don't care if you're a singer, dancer, preacher, imam, or whoever. Challenges affect all of us. But adapting to change can create some level of stress, especially when change can impact employment, income, our health, our wealth, our family, our faith. So how can we adapt to changes or challenges in our lives? Well, more importantly, overcoming these obstacles and as a part of our life, we know that they're going to happen. You can't control which ones you face or when they'll happen. However, you can control how you respond. So today's show, I will cover strategies you can use to bounce back, build up resilience, and deal with future obstacles even better. You also meet someone who is a great example of how you push through challenges to achieve goals. My next guest, I'm excited, is a transformational speaker with the focus on healing wounds from the past to break generational habits for the future. She knows what it takes to crawl through decades of untruth, hers because she's been there. I've been there. She's been a victim and she's come out on the other side. She's unafraid to share her journey in a transparent way. She believes it's the only true way to uplift yourself and those around you. She is a speaker, an author, a blogger, a mom. She's a Capricorn, and she will undoubtedly stretch you for your faith and your truth, improve your confidence, encourage you to be your very best, regardless of your setbacks. Who am I talking about? I'm talking about my new friend from H-Town, Fatima Oliver. Welcome to Sound Bombing and welcome to the studio. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for throwing in that Capricorn. Yes, I am a proud, complicated person.
Oh, Lord, I'm going to pray for you. I have a daughter, my youngest child, Samira Nafia Shields, and she is a Capricorn. And you all are some of the hardest, emotional, soft, wannabe tough people on this planet, but will say anything out of your mouth and dare somebody to say anything about. I don't know. Am I talking about you?
You definitely are talking about me, and we are very passionate about what we believe in. It is very true. It is
So
very
people don't know why I know that you're a Capricorn. People probably don't know why that's funny because when I was doing all my research, my engineer said, Dr. Shields, you got to see this video of this sister that you're going to be interviewing who goes on this rant. I'm like, what the ham sandwich is wrong with our team? Like, did somebody do something to Capricorns that I know anything about? You went on this rant and then you said, hold up, let me introduce myself. So you went through this whole rant and then you're like, well, do you all know who I am? Let me tell you who I am. So that's why we're talking about the Capricorn, because it was just so funny. But let my listeners know where you're calling in from. And we like to do a wellness check-in and we want to know how you're doing.
Yes, well, I am calling in from Houston, Texas, really Cypress, a little suburban area outside of Houston. But I am born and raised from Las Vegas, Nevada. I am 702 area code all day long. Okay.
Not she did not quote. That's old school because I'm from the 312. When people say the 773, that's old school. That's new Chicago, 708. I'm from the 312. I love, see, folks don't realize when you quoting those area code, Ludacris had a song. I ain't gonna say the name of it. He had some so-and-sos in a couple of area codes. You know what I'm talking about? Those
Yes.
So you are from Nevada, but I was just in Texas. My daughter attends Prairie View, and I stayed in Cypress.
Wow. Okay.
I stayed because there's nothing in Prairie View. I said, girl, I will come pick you up, take you shopping, but ain't nothing out there but my beautiful daughter and some of the other beautiful students that are there. So let's do a wellness check-in. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
I am doing very well. I am feeling very free and just at peace with being who I am.
I love it. Free. You rocking the yellow. You rocking the red ribbon. You got you have the I call them mariposas in Spanish, the butterflies. Talk to me. You definitely looking vibrant. Things around you. What is the red ribbon for?
Yeah, so the red ribbon is actually for sickle cell awareness. So September is National Sickle Cell Awareness Month. And sickle cell is an inherited blood disease that actually impacts a lot of minorities, predominantly African Americans, but also those of Caribbean descent, Asians, Hispanics. And so it's been known for so long to be a Black disease. And so I think it's very important to be educated about this disease. It makes your red blood cells look like a moon, a crescent moon, versus regular blood cells are circular. And so my son actually has sickle cell, and I have a niece who has sickle cell. And so it is very important. It's a part of my testimony and a way to prevent it from us feeling shame for my son having this disease, because it seems so taboo to even talk about. We were very vigilant in just being a part of the solution and educating people. And so when sickle cell month comes, I'm very much like, where y'all red ribbon at? Where at the school? Tell people, you know what to say when they ask you. And just really being a part of that community. There, unfortunately, it is a disease that a lot of times you survive through blood transfusions. So my son has had 2, and he's 11. So, it's one of those things where we don't know where the end of the road will lead, but right now we are moving in purpose, and a part of that purpose is education.
Well, we have a connection. My cousin, one of my favorite cousins in Chicago, she is the director of the Sickle Cell Foundation for the state of Illinois. My younger cousin, Tiana Hughes, has sickle cell because her dad and her mom had, they were carriers. And I have a close connection to that community. I got a chance to do some work with a couple of folks from the Steve Harvey show, because several of the folks on the show, sickle cell, dealing with sickle cell. I dated a young lady who had sickle cell. I watch how painful these episodes are. And she was like, imagine somebody squeezing your body every time I come home and I see my cousin who's in the hospital because she has an episode. So I get it. Sickle Cell Awareness Month is also Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. When you talk on another a disease that affects, people of color, in particular, Black men. And so I appreciate you sharing that, because there's a lot of people that don't know what this actually means as a disease. And I got a chance to interview this young lady. Man, this was the funniest interview. TT was probably 8, and I can't think of her cohort. They were like the sickle cell poster children, traveling all over the state of Illinois. And I interviewed the two of them. And every now and then I look at that interview. It was so cute. It was so funny because they used to come to Maryland every year where I'm currently living to talk and have this conversation. And it was really, really cool hearing these young people share their stories. And, several celebrities are dealing with this. So I really appreciate that. But this is a part of all your stories. There's so many stories that you have. I mean, I don't even know where to start. I got a chance to go to your website. Great website, the amazing things that you're doing. Today we're talking about, turning adversity into challenge. And so there are many adversities that you've dealt with. I want to start with a quote by Albert Einstein. He says, adversity introduces a man to himself. Now we know if he were alive, he would probably say adversity introduces a man and a woman or them to themselves, because we want to be proper when it comes to pronouns.
Right.
But what does that actually mean? Adversity introduces a man to himself or to herself or to themselves. What does that mean to you, Fatima, as a person who's been dealing with adversity throughout her entire life?
Yeah, I think when you're ready to face the adversity head on, it definitely introduces you to yourself, because it introduces you to your strength, to your grit, to your resilience. I think it also introduces you to just deep interpersonal relationship with your spiritual side, because I know for me, I would not have made it as far as I have made it if I wasn't spiritually centered. And that can be whatever you believe in, but just being spiritually centered and honing in to what is going on deeper than what your triggers are showing, right, in regards to your behavior. So yeah, I definitely believe, people go through adversity all day long, but it's only when you're ready to face it and ready to acknowledge that this is the space that I'm living in right now, and I need to do something to change it. To me, that's when it introduces you to your transformational self that is just waiting to break out. And so, there is definite truth to that statement.
Well, you talk about brokenness, and I know everybody is broken in certain places in their life, and not everybody is ready to face their brokenness. When did you know you were ready to face your brokenness? And then how did you know where did you actually start?
So, I really believe that everybody have rock bottoms, but you can have rock bottoms in different contexts, right? So I had plenty of rock bottoms, relationally with men, with dealing with emotional abuse, physical abuse, family, my mother, my parents, relationships, plenty of rock bottoms. And so I went through a long time with basically self-victimization and saying kind of like, woe is me, which, there was some truth to it. There was a woe is me, right? There was a lot of things that happened to me that were definitely not my fault. It was only when I got to a place of where my mental health was truly, truly being attacked, and I was so desperate for help that I began to say, what? Throw salt over my shoulder? Okay, I'll do it. Walk around in a circle 5 times? Okay, whatever I need to do to be able to save myself. And so getting transparent, I really was in a place where I was ready to end my life. And I had all the treasures that I thought I needed in order to make my life better, because I grew up on believe it or not, Vegas do got a bad side of town. Okay. And so that's what I grew up at, right? A place where we felt there was no hope. There was nothing but that. And so I always thought, well, if I could get this amount of money, if I could do this for my kids, if I married this type of man, if I got this type of job, that everything would be better. And I won't feel this sorrow that was hovering over me for most of my life. And when I got those things, I still felt just as empty. I still felt just as agitated, just as worthless, just as victimized, just as bitter and enraged. And it was in that place where I said, I can't deal with this pain screaming from the inside out. It's so exhausting trying to pretend that it is not there and dressing up my mess. It was in that moment where, one, I got help in regards to medical help. I went and saw a doctor and got diagnosed for clinical depression. And then that helped to medicate my issue for plenty of years. And then I had an additional moment where the medicine was good, but I got to a place where I still was ready to just suffocate myself with a plastic bag in a parking lot, abandoned parking lot. And nobody knew. Nobody knew this is what I was feeling. And it was in that moment where I said, well, the medicine, I appreciate it. It's brought me a long way. But why do I feel like this? Like, what happened to me that makes me every day, all day, carry this weight of despair everywhere I go? And it was in that moment of the why and being willing to really investigate the why. And no matter how afraid the unknown was for me, being willing to have the courage to keep searching and seeking the why, that is when I started to get a breakthrough. That is when I decided to go to therapy. And I decided to get share with my safe space. And to me, a safe space is people that are down for you for whatever, you know. And maybe I shouldn't say whatever. They down for you in the positive way. They want the best for you. They're not in the car with you trying to slash tires. They are trying to tell you, girl, don't get the knife. You know what I'm saying?
That sounds a little familiar. You from Vegas now? You done threw up slashing tires. I done had a relapse. Now I'm thinking about somebody to cut my tires in college. All right,
Lord, it wasn't me.
My Vegas girls.
It wasn't me. It wasn't me. I promise it wasn't me. Now I probably thought about it, but it wasn't me. Okay.
So I like that you talk about folks that are down with you, down to support you. As you're talking yesterday, and I don't believe in coincidences. I believe that everything is aligned. And quite often I spend a lot of time in my office, in my studio, build a studio in the home once COVID hit. And so, I'm going to speak to a meet with the principal tomorrow, because yesterday in my work, I work with schools, work with nonprofits, organizations around leadership development, equity, diversity, and belonging. And as I was driving, I was listening to HLN network, which is a radio station on Sirius XM. And my man was hosting a show, Hill Harper, a good friend of mine, Hill Harper, and the show is called How It Really Happened. And Fatima, what's interesting, I don't know if this was a series this particular day, but each story was about a celebrity. I'm going to go down the list, and it has a lot to do with what you said. The first one was Prince. The second one was Tom Petty. The third one was Whitney Houston. The fourth one was Michael Jackson, and the fifth one was George Michael. And so I'm listening, and there was a theme. And I get to the school a little late. And I'm sitting in the car, and this is my buddy. I hadn't seen him in years. I said, man, I'm sorry, 6 minutes late. He said, but dude, I was in the car. I could not leave until this Prince piece ended. And he said, I saw the interview. And he said, well, what was your takeaway? And I love being around people that instead of just saying, oh, how was it? He said, so what was the takeaway? What was the common theme? And the common thread with all of them, they all had some major self-esteem issues. Now you think with Houston, George Michael, Tom Petty. Listen to the diversity of ages, race, culture, and class. I didn't say all hip hop artists. I didn't say all R&B artists, but the two most painful ones. I didn't listen to the Whitney Houston one because I had to get out. Nor the Tom Petty, I had to get out as well. But I listened to the George Michael piece and Prince. And what George Michael said is something that you said. Now, George Michael sold millions and millions and millions of records. But he said in the interview on Larry King, he says, I thought I wanted all of this. I thought I wanted this celebrity. I thought I wanted this partner. He eventually came out as gay. He struggled with sexuality. And he said it still wasn't enough. And there was a time where I did not realize George Michael, on several occasions, attempted to commit suicide. They still say there's a belief that he might have done this. It was on Christmas Day. But he got to the point where he wanted to end it all. Yeah. He wanted to end it. So you look at these individuals, you look at us. So you grew up in Vegas, you're talking about you grew up humble beginnings, you moved to Texas, we all had our challenges. You look at somebody like him, like, dude, what do you have? You have a mansion, you have your partner that you love, you have the car, but all of these things were not enough. And what they did was that they all five had in common. They became addicted to a substance where they thought that if I take this substance, that it will make me better. And then the second thing that they did that you said, or the third thing is, they had enablers. They had people around them that were so concerned about losing their job or losing the money being connected to George Michael, Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, Tom Petty, Prince, that they were enabling them by giving them. And then finally, the sad part is when I heard that Prince weighed 115 pounds when they found him on an elevator and he had some drugs in his pocket and they were actually mislabeled drugs. Yeah. So that meant that they weren't coming from a doctor. They were coming from somewhere else.
Yeah.
So when you talk about rock bottom, Fatima, what was your rock bottom moment, or what was, as my pastor said, my old pastor from the South, what was your watershed experience when you said, enough is enough? I can't go back. As Les Brown says, if you fall on your back, you can look up. If you can look up, you can get up. What was your watershed moment that shifted everything for you?
Yeah, it really was just everything that had been prior instilled in me regarding my spirituality. And I just got a glimpse of light. And for me, it was a moment where I paid attention that what I was thinking, I was listening to, and I don't really like to use this word, but just to make it plain, I was listening to a crazy person and I was a crazy person. Mm-hmm. So I was taking my own advice. I was taking my own instruction. You need to do this. You need to end your life because you're in so much pain. And I just had a moment, just a brief moment that helped me to realize that what I was thinking was not healthy. And that I wanted to be around for my kids. I thought about my children and just how brokenhearted they would be if I was no longer here. That truly, truly, truly was what made me say, I got to find another way. And in that, I started going to therapy, and I went with the shades on and the hat on and my head tucked and, a big old trench coat on because I didn't want nobody to know.
That sounds like a funeral, right? Black folks, that's how we go to funerals now.
Right. So I just wore that same, I just wore the same thing, but about a good month into it, after I was giving them direction on how they could help me, I got to a place where I really had to say, and now I call it a come to Jesus moment, where I said, Fatima, you have to participate in your own healing. These people can't heal you. Like these people, they can help you see things. They can help you have observations, but you're the one that's got to do the work. And so how bad is your want to? And so it was just an accumulation of the fact that, number one, I truly, truly was thinking like at least 5 days out of the week that I wanted to end my life. That's not healthy. And I knew how I was going to do it. I just didn't have the day and the time. So, and I was listening to myself. I wasn't allowing people in to say, Fatima, you need help. And so it was when I turned to my safe space and was able to say, hey, this is truly what I'm going through. And having that encouragement, go to therapy. I think you need to go to talk therapy and tell us when you go to your first session because we want to celebrate you. Right. Where for so long, as you say, enablers, I had people in my circle that because they were just as broken as me were saying, girl, ain't nothing wrong with you. So those moments when I said, I think I'm losing my mind, they would say, girl, ain't nothing wrong with you. You too sensitive, And so it was me shifting my circle over time. So when I got to that pivotal place in my life where am I going to live or die? Really, that's what it was. I had the right people around me that said, you shall live, right? And helped me to start the process. And then from there, I truly, I've always been someone that was into education and into being challenged. I think there's a piece of me that can be dysfunctional in that space of trying to prove myself, right? So constantly educating myself. But I naturally leaned on that part of me to do my own personal educating on the mind and how the mind works and how to break habits and how to change my negative thoughts into positive affirmations. So there was a lot of work that went into me trying to save my life. And a huge part of that was also taking toxic people out of my life and learning that a healthier me had to be more important than my loyalty to dysfunction. A healthier me had to be more important than the shame I may feel when I tell people this is the state that I'm in. And that a healthier me had to be more important than the lie I had been living, because I was a poised mess. I knew how to dress it up. I knew how to put them clothes on, this mess, right? And so my health, when I said I had to participate in my own healing, I had to have that conversation with myself that I don't care what people think. I don't care if people talk about me going to therapy. I don't care about what I sound like when I say I have these thoughts and that I've had this type of hurt. When it's time to share, I'm just going to put it all out there. I'm going to vomit on folks and whatever I need to do to get it out. And I'm going to listen to the doctors, and I'm going to listen to the therapists, and I'm going to work through these boulders that have been in my life that I didn't realize I was carrying with me all this time, like a backpack, thinking that if I made more money, it would just naturally drop off. But it's been with me through every year of my life.
Well, those are some great examples. And I love when you talk about participating in your own freedom, participating in your own well-being. What I've discovered, when facing adversity, challenges, circumstances, which are beyond my control, I've asked myself 3 questions. I've asked myself, is this permanent? Is this pervasive? Is it taking too much power? What questions, Fatima, did you ask when you were faced with some of your challenges and maybe some of the challenges you face on a day-to-day basis? Because we think that once we face them, it's over. Once the boogeyman comes, it's done. What are some of the questions that you've asked yourself and continue to ask yourself?
I definitely ask myself, what is it going to look like? Similar to what you're saying, what is it going to look like 2 months from now, 3 months from now, right? Is this a permanent situation or is this a temporary situation? I ask myself, do I trust the process? Meaning, do I believe that everything is meant and that there is an opportunity to learn from it? And in saying that, excuse me, I definitely, no matter what the situation is, I look for the lesson because I just believe that there's a lesson in everything. I really do. I believe that you can learn from your enemy, right? If anything, you'll say, I won't do that again, right? I'm always looking for a lesson and a way that I can take something painful and get purpose out of it, get a point from it, get something that can help me become not more bitter, but better. And I know that sounds cheesy, but it is very true. I think that we have to change our perspective. We have to look at life not from the perspective of our pain. And so a lot of my life, and I mean all the way through my mid 40s, I was looking at my life through the perspective of my pain, all the things that had happened to me, all the things that I had fallen, a sucker to, dating the wrong people, the pain that family had brought up on me that was unfair. I had been living my life through that scope. And so when things didn't work out for me, I would say, well, of course it wouldn't work out for me. Of course it wouldn't, right? Because look where I come from. Look at what has already happened to me. I don't even know why. Fatima, you were stupid for even thinking that it would work out, right? Because everything that I've gone through, nothing ever works out for me. And so I had to stop doing that. And I think that's a form of self-victimization as well and self-sabotage. I had to change my mindset and say, but I shall recover, but I shall learn something from this, and not to wag my finger and say, see, I told you I would make it, but to say, I deserve better. It doesn't matter what the narrative has been. I deserve better. So Fatima, what can I learn from this so that I can use it for the next part of my life, right? And moving forward. And I think that's important, especially when you have kids, trying to teach them about, overcoming adversity.
Well, what I hear in your voice and what I've discovered from reading and something that you said, spirituality plays a strong role in your work. And I know that you practice Buddhism, a meditation practice that I use. I'm a part of a Black Buddhist community. I believe in many of the principles. One of my favorite authors is Pamela Ayo Yetunde, who wrote a book called, she's the editor of Black and Buddhist, What Buddhism Can Teach Us About Race. Ruth King, who wrote a book called Mindful of Race. How has Buddhism helped you, or what role has Buddhism played in you overcoming the personal challenges in your life? And then I know, as you think about that, another piece is you talked about, being judged because you're going to therapy. Of course, Black folks, we don't fool around with therapists. Now you're talking about you're a Buddhist as well. Something is really wrong with. So you're a Black Buddhist, you're a Buddhist, you're going to therapy. What's wrong with you? Let's unpack those two things.
You want to go, so you want to be real. Okay. So you really want to go there. Okay. So, in actuality, I actually grew up a Buddhist. So, my mother is a Buddhist. My brothers are Buddhists. My uncles, aunts, my grandmother was a Buddhist. And so, from as far back as I can remember, truly, when I think back on my childhood, I just remember growing up as a Buddhist. It's called Nichiren Daishonin Buddhism. Of course, they would view it as the true Buddhism. And so, I grew up as a Buddhist. It helped me to quiet my mind. To me, it was a form of meditation. The chanting, it just helped me to really be centered at like 8. And when I didn't even know that's what I was doing, right? When I went through a horrible moment in my life, sexual abuse from a stepfather, it was the chanting and the Buddhism that actually helped to focus me on on my studies, on the things that I could control. And so Buddhism has played a huge part of my life. At the age of 19, I actually became a Christian. And so I am a Christian, but Buddhism is still very prevalent in my life. My mother is a Buddhist. Like I said, my brothers, everybody, they're still Buddhists. And so I strongly believe that my spirituality, the centeredness of how important spirituality has been in my life since I can remember, is where that light came from when I was in that dark space of I want to end my life. It was those foundational principles from both, I believe, the Buddhism and from our Christian faith that was able to say, this is not the path for you. This is not your purpose. And it has been the fact that I grew up in such a spiritually centered space that whenever I am going through anything, I say I don't talk to myself, I talk to God. So, I'm constantly seeking that spiritual balance in my life. And you probably can tell just by looking at me that it is very, it's central to me. Even when I didn't know what to do, even when I was making bad decisions, I was doing them while praying. You know what I mean? So it was just, my spirituality was like my best friend. And so growing up that way, we were the taboo family. We were. We were just way different. You was not in the hood growing up talking about you was a Buddhist, okay? You were either a Christian or a Muslim. That's all you were allowed to be, right? You were not allowed to be anything different from that. So I definitely grew up not trying to be ashamed of being a Buddhist, but very cautious of the people that I allowed in my home, because now I got to explain, right? I got to explain
the things that are in the space.
I got to explain that.
Coming into my house, my kids, they always say our house is like a museum, and we do our practice every Sunday. We have our cushions that we sit on. We do our chant, we do our prayer, we do our meditation, we do a mixture of everything. Yeah. And so if you come into the space on a Sunday, I don't care who's spending the night, they're gonna be a part of that. That was my effect of growing up as a kid in the Nation of Islam. When I stayed with my cousins, I practiced the faith that they believed in at that time, and those things carried over. What would you say is one of the most common myths about Buddhism that people just don't understand?
You know what? I really think 2 things. I'm just going to put it out there. Every time I said I was a Buddhist, people said, "Oh, you mean the big man with fat man with the big stomach? You rub his stomach," right?
How ironic! I have that man on my stage when you walk into my house. Go ahead.
Yeah, for us, that was not our Buddhism. Okay, so so I had to explain that, and then I really think just the fact that it's different, and that people misjudge what is different, and that's a whole nother topic, right? And so oftentimes we were viewed as being in a cult or practicing witchcraft. And when our hearts was centered on doing what was right and doing what was pure, when we were practicing our spirituality, it was, or our prayers, or saying our prayers, it was from a place of hope and from a place of seeking light and seeking enlightenment, right? And trying to be the best person that we could be. So I think that's a lesson in itself, that no matter which path that you take on your spiritual journey, to not be so quick to judge other people who practice completely different from you. Because
if your faith teaches you, if your faith teaches that to you, then it's something wrong with what you're believing. Yeah. My mom introduced us to chanting. I remember coming into the room and her, exposing that part of her to us, and also when we changing our diet and becoming a vegan, we were always eating healthy. So those things sort of carry over. My kids, when I tell people my children don't eat meat, they never had eaten. Well, my daughter who's in Texas right now is probably listening. I don't know what the heck she's eating. She just turned 21. She probably turning up. every now and then on some food she should not be eating. But they still have the foundation that actually exists. And what's interesting is you're starting to see a shift. Mindfulness meditation is in everything. They're researching. When I was at Johns Hopkins, we were an organization, one of the institutes that was really focusing a lot on the role that meditation can play with dealing with boys who were dealing with issues around violence. And so you're starting to see those things shift.
Yeah.
And so again, I know that played a major role in your life. Now, it's interesting. I am preparing for a marathon. And what I've discovered, that there's a reason that employers like to hire marathon runners. And I was trying to figure this out. Everybody that I know who is a sort of a forward thinker, who's doing these big things on the planet, they've all run these marathons. And I'm going to be running October 15th. But what I've discovered, the reason why they've demonstrated the ability to work through challenges, push through difficult experiences, and focus on a goal, which are many characteristics that anyone who has suffered any adversity has come to the other side has shown. That's then why I run. So then why, people run to go to focus on their challenges. People meditate, to focus on their challenges. What are some things that you do with your body? What are some things you do with your time when you're dealing with adversity?
Yeah, so this is good. I actually ran a half marathon.
Go ahead.
During the pandemic. It was the longest I had. Number one, I've always been into mud runs. So
now you're going hardcore. See,
I had been
I'm not into mud runs. I'm not into zombie. Let me tell you, if you're going to chase me, you're going to get hurt. If I've been running and you're going to jump out of some tree, mud sliding up and down, I ain't ready for that. But go ahead. I'm
telling you, it is there, but it's similar.
Color runs, none of those.
Oh my God, I love them. So the mud runs, I really, 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 it is something about the obstacle races, mud runs. There is something about it that brings out grit in you that you didn't think you had. And so there's always a time where you hear the music, you think you're at the finish line. You're like, oh my God, thank you, I'm here. And then it takes you in a completely different route, just like life. And then you're like at that place where you are having an interpersonal moment with whoever you pray to and saying, help me to get through this because I don't think I can make it. And so it was those themes, those innate abilities that makes me love those type of challenging races. And so during the half marathon, to your point, I did it by myself. It was supposed to be all of us together learning how to do a half marathon. And then the pandemic hit and they canceled it. And so everything was virtual. I had nobody doing it with me. And so I got an email every week telling me how many miles to do. And then I would get my butt out there and do it. And so 3 is cute, 5 is cute, 6 is cute. But once you get up to 8 and 11 and even up to 19, 20,
yeah.
It becomes real, and so you're out there on that pavement and you're feeling just like you feel in life sometimes. I can't do this anymore. I don't have anything left in me. Like I'm ready to I'm done, right? I'm done. And a lot of times you throw in the towel, then you got to go back and get it, right? And say, I didn't mean to throw it in. And so that is what I love. I believe that those races have helped me to realize that I got more fight in me than I thought I had. And so that's why I definitely like those. So in response to your question, when I'm really going through, back in the day, I used to run to everybody and tell them all my problems, right? And get everybody's viewpoint and try everything everybody else was doing. And maturity has taught me to start inward. And so when I'm really struggling with making a decision for anything, I pray first. I go to the ground first. I really do. And for me, I'll exercise. Of course, I like to get in a jog, but realistically, when my mind is so busy, it's hard for me to focus even on running. So I definitely, I go to the ground first. I turn on my music. My worship music, and I stay in that space. But my family, number one, I have a home full of boys. I'm a boy mom. And when they hear that music blasting out of the room, even my husband, nobody ever comes into that room. They just stay away from the room. They're like, oh, she going in, right? But that is where I have to center myself. I focus on centering myself because that's where the wisdom is at. that's where the guidance is at. That's where the reminders are at to Fatima, control your controllables. You can't control everything, right? Look for intrinsic motivators instead of the extrinsic ones, right? Things that are going to get everybody else's approval. Some decisions that you have to make are not popular. So you need that inner strength. And so that is definitely where I go. I go to the floor first. I go to my knees. I go to my prayers. I go to my devotions. I go to whatever is inspirational, any type of motivators, affirmations. I just submerge myself into that type of a space so that almost like I'm in a cocoon to keep me safe until I can figure out what decision to make.
Well, it's interesting you talk about being grounded. It's interesting you talk about going to the soil. It's interesting you talk about the mud run. It's interesting you talk about getting on the floor and feeling the earth. Your book, The Prescription is in the Dirt, yeah. rising through the pain. I love the metaphor when someone says they threw dirt on me, but they didn't know that I was seeds. They didn't know that it was seeds in me. They threw mud on me, but they didn't know that I was seeds, and it eventually grew. One of the things I love about my middle name, I learned this from a TV show called Highway to Heaven, and there was a guy named Darnell that was on there. It was interesting. His name was Darnell, and the woman explained to him his name meant a weed, a weed. And he says, Darnell means a weed. And so he was like, what does that mean? He says, that means that you will grow anywhere. It's like Tupac's book, A Rose That Grew Through Concrete, that you will grow anywhere. Talk to my listeners about your book, The Prescription is in the Dirt, Rising Through the Pain. Why did you write the book? What was the inspiration? And what will the readers walk away with after putting this book down?
Yeah, well, definitely they will walk away from this book knowing that can't nobody save you but you, number one. And number two, that there is always purpose in pain. Sometimes you have to work a little harder to find it, but it is always available to you if you search for it, right? We have the choice of how we're going to view our traumatic experiences, our tragedies. We have that choice. So really quickly, Fatima, that means daughter of a prophet. I didn't know that meant daughter of a prophet. I hated my name because everybody would always mess it up. Okay. And so now I take it however people want to say it. But when I was 13, 14, a Muslim friend of ours told me your name means daughter of a prophet. And there's a story about a princess who her dad was one of the Islamic heads, and so forth and so on. But it initially means a daughter of a prophet. And so now that I have worked through so many boulders in my life and how centered I am spiritually, it makes so much sense to me why I was named Fatima. Even though my mom just saw a little girl and she was so beautiful and dark and rich and big eyes and trying to see her sister who just had a baby, trying to see her in the maternity ward, but she was so tiny. My mama thought she was so beautiful, so she named me after her. She had no idea that my name would mean so much in regards to what I've went through in my life. The reason why I wrote the book, really quickly, I have been through, at the age of 2, I was burned on 25% of my body, primarily my legs and my feet. And so from a young age, when I was just beginning to learn words, right, I also learned the cruelty that people of life and how cruel people can be, adults can be towards people that are different, towards children that are different. And so I grew up with this sorrow following me everywhere I went. I was depressed. Most of my life didn't know that's what I was. I was sexually abused. I was physically abused by 2 stepfathers. I was domestic abuse with the husband, and I stayed and couldn't figure out why I kept staying. I lost a child. I have a child with a disease that can be terminal. I have been through a lot of stuff. And if I wanted to sing a swan song, I deserve it. I've earned it. You know what I'm saying? And so I lived a life that said, woe is me, I'll never be nothing. And when I started working through my own personal journey of just trying to stay alive, and once I hit those big boulders that I just shared with you, and worked through each one in regards to how they impacted me emotionally and mentally, and how they had stunted my growth in the desire of the things that I wanted for my life. When I started going through each one and pulling back the layers and seeing who was at blame versus who wasn't, and what I needed to let go versus where I needed to put boundaries, and how I needed to work through the process of forgiveness, and mainly forgiving myself for holding on to the stuff for so long. On the other side of that was a huge testimony that I didn't even see because I was too busy in the trenches. And so that's where my book came from, basically seeing purpose in pain. And that's a lot of times when we're going through it, we don't see none of that. We can't see the forest from the trees. We're just trying to get through day by day. My book talks about me getting through day by day and how I had to learn to crawl before I walked, real talk, in the dirt before I knew how to stand up on my own too. The dirt, the reason why I say the prescription is in the dirt, because that is truly the truth. That's where my healing was at. My healing was in me facing all those things that I had ran from for years, all those things that I thought I had gotten over that had built these triggers in my life, so that when people would say certain things or would treat me a certain way, I would blow up and didn't understand why those things bothered me so deeply, or why I had this weird relationship with certain people. It was only when I started dealing with the dirt of my life, the taboo stuff, the things that we say, we don't talk about that. When I started talking about those things and giving my pain a voice, that's when I was going through the dirt. And dirt, that is what they throw on you at the gravesite. And a lot of us are walking around like zombies, right? We are excelling in some parts of our life, in our work, but in our personal life, we are falling apart. Nobody really knows us. We are a hot mess, like I said. But if we allow that dirt to germinate, right, to grow something, if we get in there and turn that soil, make the dirt into soil, like you said, something beautiful will grow from it. And I believe that that's what has happened with my life. And I'm so grateful. And it was not easy. And it was tough. And it was uncomfortable. And I did lose important people in my life because they could not understand this change, this transformation that was happening with me. But I'm more free. And I'm happy from the inside out. I don't have to fake it, you know? Shoot, putting on a fake smile, that stuff is tiring, right? I don't have to do that anymore because it's real and it's genuine. And that's because I did the work. I went through the dirt and I found the roots. And I put stuff up that was in my life that was not conducive to where I needed to go as far as my purpose. And now, you know, I truly, truly am in a space where I'm living my best life from the inside out. And I'm grateful. And that is what people will get when they're reading the book, and they will get encouragement and they will be empowered. But at the end of the day, it's up to them to do the work. You have to do the work. How bad is your want to? And that's what I had to learn to participate in my own healing. And I pray that people use my book as a template to participate in their own healing.
And where can my listeners find copies of the book, find more about you, and if they want to work with you? Because I know there's several classes that you teach, your self-love course and some other classes. How can they get in contact with you?
My website is fatimac.com, FATIMAC.com. Everything is there. There are free resources there. To your point, there are study guides that are there that from anything on micromanagement and why you do that to people, and anger and the fear of confrontation. All these different study guides are there that you can walk through on your own if you don't want anybody to help you. But if you want my help, you can also go there and send me a message and we can connect. My book is everywhere books are sold, which I am so happy about that. But you know, Amazon got everything. So if you just want to go to Amazon, go on to Amazon and look up Fatima C. Oliver or the name of the book. The prescription is in the dirt. You'll get halfway in typing it and it'll pop up. And yes, support me. I would really appreciate it. But more than anything, you know, just start doing the tough work because it's so worth it. You know, your life is so worth it. Your greatness that is waiting to come out. To me, that's what purpose is. It's your potential. And so it is waiting to come out, but you got to do the work.
with all the things that you've gone through, with all the struggles and challenges, and we talked
Yeah.
about running marathons and all the lessons that one can learn from a marathon. Why then do we run away from adversity?
Wow, that is so good. I truly believe we run away from it because we're afraid of it. We're scared. We're scared of what's going to come out of it. We're scared of the change, but we cannot have growth and change at the same time. So you got to figure out which one. No, I'm sorry. You cannot have comfort and change at the same time. So it's like, which one do you want more? Right? Do you want to be comfortable? And that's why a lot of people don't deal with the adversity. They ignore it because they're comfortable. They know how to deal with it. Right? I didn't start working on myself till I was in my mid 40s. Why? Because by then I knew how to medicate my issues. I knew how people would respond, and I knew how to make it up to them. I knew how to operate in my mess. And that's why I think another reason is because we're afraid of who we will become once we face it. We're afraid. I was afraid of not liking myself. Like once I did all this deep work, was I going to be boring? Like, was I going to still be like, was I going to be all extra serious? And people would be like, oh my God, I can't even be around her. She all deep all the time. Like, was my family going to like me anymore? Was I going to like myself? I was afraid. And I truly had to have a moment where I said, well, shoot, if this as far as I've gotten with my life being jacked up and my thinking being jacked up, how much more great will I be once I clean up all this stuff, right? So how could it be negative? And so sometimes you just have to have those practical conversations with yourself. But I really do. I think it's because we are afraid of our atmosphere, our environment changing, the people being removed out of our life. Because honestly, it may happen. Because you don't need them folks around you anyway. You know they bad. You know they're a bad influence. You just don't want to let it go because it's comfortable. And how you're going to be yourself. Are you going to be more in love with yourself? And sometimes we are afraid of that. But I'm just like, if you've been loving yourself or if you can't stand yourself now, well, what's the opposite? Right?
So it's interesting listening to you say that. I want to go back to, the interview about George Michael. Out of all the people that I listened to, that was his big struggle. When they created Wham, he wanted to be a star, he and his cohort, and he struggled with not only his sexuality. He was this guy who had this great voice, this great energy, and the people around him saying, well, if you come out as gay, then you're going to lose all these women. So think about that. You're going to lose all the women. You're going to lose all the listeners. People aren't going to come to your concerts. Of course, it's at a different time now, even though many people still struggle with it. But that's what he was saying. So when he eventually came out, he felt much better. But then there was still this uneasiness. Am I still okay with who I am? And then what happened was the one person he gave himself to eventually died. The very first person eventually died. And so when you talk about, overcoming those obstacles, running from that adversity, that you feel so much better. And he felt so much better. But the moment that he jumped out and gave himself to someone, then that person transitioned. So it has been a joy hanging out, talking with you. I can talk for you forever. I want to encourage you to go and get her book, but you cannot leave because the second part of the show is called the Super Bomb Questions. And the difference between the first part, I'm going to ask the questions and I need you to respond as quickly as possible. So I always ask my guests to take 2 mindful breaths before we begin. Inhale. Let it out. One more inhale. Let it out. Here we go. What's your favorite word?
Absolutely.
What's your favorite quote?
If you pray for rain, you got to deal with the mud.
What's your superpower?
Affirmation.
What's your spirit animal?
A lion.
What moves you to tears of joy?
Laughter.
What moves you to tears of sorrow?
Heartbreak.
What do you wish you had more time to do?
I think love on those that I haven't loved enough.
What is the book or books you've given most as a gift and why?
The Bible.
What's your morning routine?
Get up, pray, turn my worship music on, and do my faith.
What
But I
advice?
mean, moisturize and all that good stuff. Not
She
makeup,
said, she
moisturize.
said moisturize. What
Yeah.
advice are you glad that you ignored?
Huh. I don't think there is any. I don't think there is any because I wouldn't be where I am.
What advice would you give to your younger self?
Be bold, be brave, and it's going to be okay.
What's your favorite sound?
Quiet.
Well, Fatima, I thank you for not being quiet on this interview because you were amazing. You dropped some jewels. You woke some people up. You shook some foundations. I appreciate you hanging out with me today in the bomb shelter. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We out of here. I want to first of all just thank you again. I want to thank my musician, my staff, Supremacy for our theme music, and all of you for listening. Make sure you subscribe, leave a comment, stop being stingy, and share me with all of your friends. I'm on every platform. If you want to know more about me, go to drlds.com. And as always, believe something wonderful is about to happen and that some people miss the message because they're too busy looking for the mess, but not you. If you like this episode, subscribe and go and support Fatima Oliver's, all of her books and all of the things that she's doing. Take care. Peace.